I'm on the clock in 12 slow drafts right now. I'm getting into the middle rounds in all these drafts. A lot more decision points. It feels like a lot more of, piecing together the structure, the stacks, what I'm going to do at quarterback in all these builds. We'll talk through how all those teams are shaping up. We'll spin the wheel. We'll remember some guys. We'll talk about one of the teams, whoever wins that wheel spin. This is Stealing Signals. Let's get it. What is up, guys? Thank you for joining me on this Saturday. It's still Saturday morning here, 10 a.m. on the West Coast. Some of you guys, maybe it's the early afternoon. Memorial Day weekend. I know a lot of people busy doing stuff. We don't have anything big planned. We did some stuff for the kids' spring break. So I'm going to fire up a stream here now. I'm going to be firing one up on Monday morning as well, as these drafts start to wind down. I got some comments. It was pretty fun. A few of you guys mentioning that you're feeling almost invested in some of these teams and wanting to know what's going to wind up happening, how these builds are going to finish up. So, and I mean, I feel the same way. I like chatting through them with you guys. A lot of these picks have been... KOB says, Jesus, Grush openers have to go that hard. I feel like I'm watching a Marvel movie. Yeah, again, shout out to my guy, Bob Gilchrist, who made that fantastic stuff. I gave him like very limited like direction in how I wanted the graphics and stuff to go. And he built some awesome stuff. So yeah, that rules. But yeah, today, again, on Monday morning, I know Pete's Best Ball Breakfast, he's flexed over to Tuesday. Pete Overjet, for anyone who somehow isn't aware of who he is. No ADP chasing on Monday, so going to fill that time slot as well. These drafts are starting to, they're not necessarily winding down, but they are the fastest ones are starting to get into the later rounds. The slower ones, I just made a pick in like the 5th or 6th, I think the 6th round in one. Some of them are still really slow and legging. You can see the little green bars like this one that I put the 3 stars on. Let's jump into that. This draft's almost full. I'm in the 17th round already on this one. So I took my 16-11. So the point I'm getting at, I entered the 45 slows. You guys who have been to the channel this week would know. I assume most people who are hanging out have seen some of the other videos. I enter a bunch of slow drafts. I'm not in a state where I can do the fast drafts. We go through all the drafts. We do all the drafts. Some of these are starting to fill or finish or going to finish in the net, probably over this weekend, in which case I'm going to need more slow drafts, right? So we'll see, when that comes. Eventually the content schedule is going to slow down a little bit if I'm not going to have enough drafts to pick, to talk through. But while I have time, we're going to keep doing it. So today, again, on Monday, going to have some fun streams. Let's start with this one because this is one we've talked a lot about. I added the 3rd star. This is the one I also talked about on 45 slows going into Crane. Those are rookie numbers. I don't know how he does it. I mean, he's got his system. It's crazy. Road trip definitely coming. Appreciate all you guys hanging out in the chat. This is the one we talked also a little bit about on ship chasing. I saw somebody else tag us and mention they went Nico Diggs and hit the Lamar Andrews. I had this decision at 47 on one of our streams, or maybe I covered it on one of the earlier streams this week. I felt like Andrews was the home run swing pick to have a bring back on my Houston stack. But I also would just take Kincaid over Andrews in a vacuum and didn't feel like the bring back was a massive necessity there with Andrews. It was the optimal approach. But if I lost Stroud by taking Andrews, and this is what Pat Crane pointed out and other people have pointed out, you could take Lamar at 502. I could still have the Lamar Andrews and then have double bringbacks. That's a really fun week 17 stack. It's a really fun DFS type thing. But I continue to contend that would not be the optimal way to build this team when you invest in a 211 in Nico Collins and a 302 in Stephon Diggs. To hit on both of those picks at those evaluations, we know there's going to be values at the 2-3 turn that are huge seasons. And to really have to get, I mean, it's not the only way to get to week 17. There are narrow paths, and I understand the utility to building fun, different types of builds, because if you get one through, you can't really tell how you're going to get one through. But at the same time, like, we need to make decisions that are not just about like creative builds. Like, when we make a move with a pocket passer like CJ Stroud to hit both Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs here, it's really imperative that CJ Stroud's on that team for me. We've talked through this. I continue to believe that. The reason I'm highlighting this again is, well, number one, we're back on this team, but it goes CeeDee Lamb, Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, CJ Stroud. I get Kincaid on the way back. Yoshi does go Lamar Andrews, which was something that I was expecting as a strong possibility, but I'm okay with Kincaid. I go JSN, I go Rashee Rice. So through 7 rounds, I have the Stroud Kincaid anchors at QB and tight end, and 5 receivers, and 5 good ones. I really like this JSN Rashee Rice 6-7 turn, and then I get a really nice start to my 0RB build with Jalen Warren, Trey Benson, Chase Brown, Tyjae Spears. Really good values, ADP values on Dallas Goedert and Trevor Lawrence as my QB2, tight end 2. Talked a little bit about Trevor Lawrence as the QB2 there, even unstacked, and I wasn't going to be able to stack him. Even Gabe Davis was gone at this point. But at this price, I thought of him as more of an advance rate player. I have the CJ Stroud stack for the playoffs was the hope. And then I get Rashad Bateman as a reasonable value in 14. So the reason I'm going through all this is to update the team. We end up taking Rashad Bateman in 14, about 12 picks ahead of ADP. I say reasonable value. I guess that's relative to the late rounds. I know he wasn't too far buried. I think he was maybe like the 3rd receiver by ADP at that point. And so it was nice to get a Baltimore bring back later, because I didn't get the Andrews. I take Bucky Irving at 1502 to add to the running back room. I took him ahead of ADP as well. I start to do that more when I really like the team. I slid down the running back list. There were some running back values at that turn, but I slid down the running back list a little bit and grabbed Irving, who's really one of my favorites in that range. And then in late 16, 11, I also take Devontae Walker. So now my wide receiver room is that top 5 that I really like: Lamb, Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, JSN, Rashee Rice. And then it's 2 Baltimore bringbacks on the Houston double stack. And I think Bateman and Walker are a fun kind of tandem when you have a strong top 5 anyway, without the bring back element. If you feel really good about your top 5 receivers, you feel like Bateman and Walker maybe could either one hits or they ping pong a little bit, and you get an opportunity to Christopher says Yoshi is all, this guy keeps sniping my Baltimore stacks. He's probably pissed. I didn't think about that. I took Bateman at 14-11 and I took Walker at 16-11. That's a great point. With the although behind my Bateman pick, he took Isaiah Likely, which I thought about Likely there, but I already had the 2 tight ends with Dalton Kincaid and Goddard. I like Likely more than Bateman in a vacuum probably at this point. But it's a nice little Baltimore addition, and I needed to add to the wide receiver room. And I think, to finish the other thought, I think Bateman and Walker together, when you really like the top 5 wide receivers and you've taken a lot of you've put a lot of capital into the early wide receiver build, you really need those top 5 wide receivers to be a strong part of the offense. And then it's like, okay, well, I'm making a directional bet on the Ravens passing game. Maybe they throw a little bit more. Maybe they're a little bit more spread out. Maybe one of Andrews or Zay Flowers misses a little bit of time, and Bateman and Walker would both elevate in any of those scenarios and kind of hopefully hit the lineup once or twice each. So at this point, in the early 17th, we have a 2-5-7-2 build. I honestly think the receiver, this is one of the rare situations where I feel like the receiver room's pretty full with 7, and I feel good about it. One thing as I'm thinking through and talking through this build and talking about the strength of the playoffs being the Houston double stack and that Trevor Lawrence is kind of just an ADP value advance rate player because I got him 30 picks after ADP, but I wasn't really able to stack him. I have Tank Bigsby in the queue. I probably will add him as my 6th running back because then it's like at least a minor stack. Maybe, not, obviously Bigsby's upside scenario is really handcuff related. So maybe ETN goes down and then you have a scenario where Bigsby's actually, playing a lot down the stretch and he catches 1 or 2 passes in that week 15 to 17 period. But the other thing I want to go look at that I am just sort of thinking about is the Texans week 15 and 16 matchups, which are Miami and at Kansas City. And then they get Baltimore. So I have the Rashee Rice for the week 16 bring back. That's just fortunate. I didn't plan that out. Then Miami, I did not hit, and I'm not going to probably at this stage. Maybe a week 18, like Malik Washington. Maybe there's a Jalen Waddle injury and Malik Washington emerges later in the year. That's an intriguing thought because I feel like the 18th pick after I take Bigsby as my 6th RB feels a little bit like a free pick. I think Stroud Lawrence is good enough for 2 QBs. I think Kincaid Goddard is good enough for 2 tight ends. I think 6 running backs will be perfectly fine here with Jalen Warren, Trey Benson, Chase Brown, Tyjae Spears, Bucky Irving, and then adding Tank Bigsby, who goes very late, but I think is a little bit undervalued very late at this stage. He seems like the clear backup. They've mentioned him by name a couple of times there. They want to give him another opportunity to be the backup, even though he kind of lost work to D. Ernest Johnson last year. You can get him in the 17th round. The main thing I wanted to think about with this team is whether I would try to push Tank Bigsby to 18-11. Which is the second to last pick at 215. His ADP's higher. The ADPs are a little, wonky at the very end of drafts. He's also going undrafted in some with a 209 ADP, I would imagine. But I think I got to take him here. Make sure I get another Jacksonville player. He's the one I want to get into this build as a 6th running back. And then also the chat saying Malik might go before Bigsby. That might happen. I don't feel like I need to get Malik for that week 15 stack, particularly because the fact that I have Rashee Rice for the week 16 thing I'm pretty pumped about that. I don't really like the Malik Washington play. I think Miami is so concentrated when their main guys miss time, they just concentrate even more on the other guys. Like when Tyreek misses time, it's like it's Waddle, and then it's the running backs get more work. Like they'll run a little bit more. Like they think players, not plays. I've used that term in podcasts, over the last couple of years. But Mike McDaniel calls an offense thinking players, not plays. He does not think about like what play he wants to call. He's like, how do I get the ball into this player's hand from what I have in my my playbook and what the defense is running and all of those things. So. The only way I really see Malik Washington being particularly relevant, well, there's 2 ways. One is that he's just a super good player. He hits, like in a big way as a rookie in a way that's hard to see right now. And then the other one is that there's injuries and then he emerges and he becomes a guy that they're thinking plays for. But I think that's a multi-week thing. It takes time. I think it's a thin path for him in year 1. But an intriguing thing. All right. A lot of good chat comments here. I'm going to go back. I took the Bigsby pick. Wait, let me make sure. I want to see my exact clock on the shortest ones. Let me make sure I'm not going to time out on anything before we. All right. I got an hour on the shortest ones. A moment ago, Doc Love. That's what it is. Reading the usernames are I'm gonna have to get used to that. I was gonna call it like Doe Clove, Doc Love, JS. So Gretchen, on the last stream you showed the spreadsheet. Gonna have to mark this one explicit with weighted targets per route run. The one standout versus ADP was D Hop. Seems inevitable they throw more. How is he not a priority at cost? This is a great question. This is a really, really good question. I wrote about him in the targets per route run write-up. So back in early March, I break down from that same line of thinking every offense. I've done this the last 3 years, and it winds up being really good stuff that I look back on. I mean, I say that obviously as somebody who wrote it, but I wind up looking back on it the whole off season, and I like that it's like early in the off season that I get all these thoughts down, player takes, and it is helpful to me when I'm doing August stuff. And then when I look back at the past year stuff, like it's been accurate. Like my early off season stuff last year was Keenan Allen and Mike Evans were going to be values in 2023 because they had kind of rebounded in 2022 from what looked like a decline in their profile. So you guys can check all that stuff out at bengresh.substack.com. That's the newsletter. Definitely go subscribe there. By the way, subscribe here on YouTube. It's incredible. We're already up over 700 subscriptions. I'm hoping to get to 1,000 like in record speed. I thought that would take like a year. I thought it would take at least months and months of doing this stuff. It's incredible to see how much people have been willing to come and subscribe to these and like the videos and comment on them and all of those things. Please jump over there on YouTube and do that. Turn on the notifications, because I usually decide, like I did today, like 15 minutes or a half an hour before I go live that I got a little pocket of time here before I take my daughter to her soccer practice. I'm gonna fire up a stream, do some picks. So it's not something that I'm giving a lot of advance notice. So those notifications can be helpful as well. On the DeAndre Hopkins question, my concern, his targets per out run has still been really strong the last 2 years. And I wrote about this. I wrote about him very much like Devontae Adams as a guy who still earned a lot of volume but wasn't efficient last year. My concern would be twofold. One, his efficiency started to fall off already in 2022. So his profile has looked very similar from that regard both of the last 2 seasons. I gotta share my screen. I was gonna share this. We gotta stop that. We gotta start this. This is a good question I want to dig into. All right. DeAndre Hopkins. Let's see. Can you guys see this? Yeah, there we go. So the yards per out run last year, still over 2, is like, this is good. 1.98 for a guy who's older. He's not fallen off, right? 5. The other thing going into last year is he hadn't run a ton of routes in 2022 and 2021, sub 400 routes both years, because of injuries and I think like a suspension in 2021, if you go back that far. He gets back to 500 plus routes last year. He still missed a little bit of time, but this targets per out run number is great. It's one of the best, in a multi-year stretch for him. Really good weighted targets per out run, because he actually got that at a really high ADOT. So for him, like a 0.76 weighted targets per out run in 2023 looks fantastic. And this is what Doc Love is asking here with the comment when he saw the top of the names. Probably paused it on that stream. I pulled up the top however many names. DeAndre Hopkins' volume is right there with the best of them. My 2 minor concerns. One is that we already had a yards per target dip from most of his other career numbers in 2022, and then it stayed down sub 8 in 2023, despite the fact that he actually hit on a couple pretty fluky deep touchdowns. And I think he had a 3 TD game in Will Levis's first start. He had 2 long TDs, one where he totally threw the defender down. It was offensive pass interference. It didn't get called, and he gets like a 60-yard TD. And I know, like, yeah, you can't just take out one play, but also, 60 yards on a 120 target season is 0.5 yards per target. Like, think through that real quick. 120 targets is probably about how many DeAndre Hopkins had. 60 yards is a half a yard per target for the season. You get one of those plays, it makes a pretty substantial difference on stuff like yards per target. It's a big reason why yards per target is a fairly fluky play, because those big explosive downfield plays are pretty fluky year over year. You either hit on a few of them or you don't. The really good players hit on them every year. But even the really good ones might hit on 5 and then 2, and they vacillate a little bit, and then their yards per target gets heavily influenced by that when you really think about it. I think Hopkins has sort of lost a step in the yards per target. I made a little bit of a mental note in that first Levis start that he was really efficient in that game, Hopkins. And I'm going to switch over to Hopkins. This was sort of the idea of the spin the wheel stuff I was talking about. I like digging into these teams questions and things, and we've done it multiple times without actually spinning the wheel. But the Titans stuff becomes really interesting. 2023, I'm going into the game. So he has a 3-touchdown game, 4 catches, 128, 3 TDs on 6 targets. I've got this pulled up on the stream here. 21.33 yards per target. It was a really huge element to like how is YPT wound up at 7.7 by PFR's numbers. The rest of the way, he has a good game against Miami. And then a solid game on low targets against Jacksonville, a solid game, catches all 7 of his targets against Houston. But there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games after that first Will Levis start. And Hopkins' yards per target is like trash in more than it's not. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those are 6.5 or lower. Single game yards per target is not like a really important stat. The point I'm trying to drive home, actually, and where I want to go with this is not to DeAndre Hopkins' game log, but to his quarterback's game log, is that the point I want to drive home is that I don't think people are accounting for how bad Will Levis was last year because he had that first amazing start. His first game, he goes 19 to 29, 238 and 4 touchdowns. It looked incredible. I wrote about it in Stealing Signals, though, that like it was a little bit fluky at the time. It was lower volume. He only threw for 238 yards despite multiple long touchdowns. I'm not going to pull up the game long, but I'm going to pop it into a new window so I can get it. Hopkins had a 47-yard TD, a 61-yard TD, and a 16-yard TD. His other TD, Levis's, was a 33-yarder to Nick Westbrook-Akine. That was his best pass of the game. It was an incredible throwback pass to Nick Westbrook-Akine. He obviously did good things to put up this stat line, but he had 3 30-plus yard TDs. The 2 long ones to Hopkins were 47 and 61 yards. That's over 100 yards right there on those 2 plays. He only throws for 238 in the game. And so the point that I remember driving home on Stealing Signals is like this kind of a weird point, but outside of those couple efficient plays, like he basically didn't complete a whole lot of passes. It's kind of hard to have this many long touchdown passes and not throw for 250 yards or 300 yards. He ends up having some games where he throws for a little bit more yardage later, but a lot of games sub 200 passing yards as well. Some sub 50% completion games. Suddenly, that first game really was the sort of the outlier. He starts to throw the rest of the way. He threw 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. I mean, it's just over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 starts, but the 8th one, he only played 13 snaps. The first 7, he played 100% of the snaps in all those games. And that's where all of his TDs and interceptions came. Over those 7 starts, he throws 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. You can't ignore the 4 TD game, but I do think it's an important element to who we should expect Will Levis to be going forward. I think the Callahan hire was a good hire, but then you add Ridley to the equation as well. And so now I'm worried about Hopkins' efficiency, and I'm worried about some of the target volume, and I'm worried about just like what this offense is going to be. All of that said, I still think DeAndre Hopkins is probably a good pick. I just haven't taken him. I don't think I've taken him on any teams because it becomes one that is difficult with the age curve as well and seeing a multi-year decline in efficiency. He's one that I don't continue to earn a ton of volume. I just wonder how much of that is like first read target stuff and with Ridley there, whether that continues. They gave Ridley a big contract. So if his targets per run does dip and he is kind of over the age curve, I would take Hopkins over Ridley. I'll say that. I haven't drafted Ridley either. I'm pretty out on the Titans passing game. I'm taking some Tyjae Spears, but yeah, that would be sort of my thought on Hopkins. I still think he's really intriguing for those volume numbers, and I think this is a great point from Doc Love, so I wanted to highlight it. How do you feel about 3 QB or 3 tight end? Generally speaking, I'm fine with either. I think they're probably being overplayed a little bit because of a lot of QB injuries last year, and I think if you hit the QB window and you get good enough early QBs, you can still try to do the 2 QB thing, and I still think it buys you something that's valuable with the depth it can get you at running back and receiver. But I think I'm going to wind up wishing that I had built more like that's what we do on ship chasing a decent amount, and I think Pat and Pete are much sharper than me, especially with the structural stuff, with the added reps. And one of the things I'm finding is like when I hit 2 QB window QBs and I hit my 2 early tight ends, as I start to get in the later rounds, I'm like, I'm certainly not liking the depth that I'm building out at running back or receiver. Just having more guys at running back and more guys at receiver isn't going to answer the problem of giving up so much draft capital to get to 2 strong QBs and 2 strong tight ends, which is why, like, a lot of the teams I would build over there with them, I know Pete would do, like, if you get an elite tight end, you could just do a second tight end very late, which this was maybe more last season. But, like, if we took a Kelsey team, we would just take our second tight end in the last round. It would just be a 2 tight end. And I always felt like that was maybe not enough tight end capital. If you went 2 tight ends, you probably want a second tight end who's still, like, a viable play, especially this year where you don't have to pay a first-round price for a tight end, which you did with Kelsey. So if you're getting, a 5th or 6th round tight end as your tight end 1, you can, I think, justify a 11th round tight end 2 or whatever it is and be like, yeah, that's like a Dalton Schultz, and that's still like a pretty solid tight end 2. And now I can do a 2 tight end build. But having said that, you might want that 11th round receiver or running back, and then just take 2 late other tight ends, make it a 3 tight end build, or just a 2 tight end build, like the 1 elite and 1 punt that I just described. It's, it's one of those things you got to think through. But I guess what I'm saying is, the 3 QB and the 3 tight end ones often wind up being 2 are late picks to add to that, or at least for me, especially at QB, I wind up pushing QB. I mean, some of my 3 QB builds last year were just 3 really late ones, and I wrote about this in some of my stuff in my early drafts. My early individual drafts. Last year was my first, exposure to doing my own drafts and building my own portfolio, when I was writing about some lessons and stuff that I took away. And I found myself just like punting all 3 quarterback spots. And some of those teams actually did well because I took some Sam Howell, but I also took a lot of like Desmond Ridder and Kenny Pickett that didn't do well. And I don't think any of those guys finished the year as their team starters. Maybe Ridder did, but Howell didn't. He did eventually get benched, even though he had a really good year up to that point. He was helping for fantasy. He was helping these teams. And Pickett, I guess Pickett maybe finished the year too, but then they like him and Ridder weren't good. And so those teams like late in the year didn't have an ability to score quarterback points really. And it was like, oh yeah, this team's in, the like in the week 15 to 17 playoffs, and I see it there and it's live, except it's not live. Like, I'm like, I don't think this team can win. So that's one of the lessons I took from last year. Some of my 3 QB stuff, I pushed all 3 too late. I want to try to hit at least 1 in the mid rounds, and then maybe it's too late this year. There's some late QBs I really like still, though. And we've talked about it a little bit on Stealing Bananas, like a Daniel Jones. We've talked about Bryce Young as a potential bounce back. Bo Nix, a guy that, I mean, for a rookie, I think is going to be a really good fit for the Sean Payton system and at least be usable. And he's a good fallback really late. I think he's going to probably start the whole season. Zach Wilson's his backup right now. That's who they brought in. Or it's Jarrett Stidham. I mean, it's one of those guys. So interesting to think through where you allocate the capital to make these things happen. I'm totally open to both. But I think I would prefer to do 2 QB and 2 tight end, get 6 running backs and 8 receivers. A lot of those builds where we do 3 QB or 3 tight end ship chasing, we only do 5 running backs. And I do personally wonder if that's too thin. I think you can succeed with 5 running backs, but in half PPR, it's not a bad thing to have running backs start helping you on the flex. Like in full PPR, I'm always thinking I want enough wide receiver depth to be starting a receiver in the flex at all times. Half PPR, it's like, meh. I mean, if I hit on my 6th running back is good, fine. I'll be flexing them. It's hard enough to fill the 3 wide receiver slots with good wide receiver scores every week. So structural stuff, interesting, certainly to talk about. I tend to stay within that range, 2 to 3 QBs, 2 to 3 tight ends, 5 to 6 running backs, 7 to 9 receivers. I don't really go to the extreme builds. Some more, good thoughts, some positive thoughts. Appreciate you guys. Just kind of cheers from another road trip drafter. Man, I wish I could say your username. There's got to be something. Sviatogor, New York Jets at the end there, I think. Jets fan? Probably not. Damian Pearson option with your Houston guys. That's an interesting. I think Dameon Pierce is probably a reasonable 20th round pick right now. I think he has a shot to be the handcuff. Joe Mixon gets hurt. I mean, they don't have Singletary on the roster anymore. Did I just time out? Oh, I had new ones pop up on the clock. I'm not even sharing my screen. Let's do some more drafting. I want to hit on your guys' comments, but I'm sitting here staring at my active drafts and something popped up. This one was 51. It was ticking down and then it moved off my screen. I was like, what did I just? But I'm getting more stuff hitting on the clock here. No, I haven't really been into Keelan Robinson yet. I did not even know there was a Will Levis sex tape. Says going to review. Goblor says, are you going to review the Will Levis sex tape after these picks? Real opportunity to grow the channel here. I think we're going to pass on that. A lot of really kind comments here. I appreciate it. Thoughts on Ridley? I just haven't been picking him because it's a change of offense. We usually don't see the wide receivers who change offense like smash. Like, I don't think he beats me, right? And then I just talked about I have some real concerns about Will Levis. So I just didn't think he was very good last year after his long layover. I mean, seems like a really awesome human being. I loved his Players Tribune article last year. Somebody I want to root for, but it's tricky. It's tricky. Dom's back. What's up, buddy? He says, finally got around to reading your Eliminator piece. Great stuff, man. Hope everyone has a good weekend maxing the palm. Appreciate that. Forgot to mention that one as well. Over at the Ceiling Signals Substack, I wrote up a long piece about my Eliminator strategy. I've hit on some stuff on the show. It's a lot harder to get all of the thoughts together on the show, so I decided to write it all. Don't be Adam Thielen. You didn't like the way I read his. I mean, you gotta like do the syllables for how to say this name. It's not a New York Jets name, though. We learned at the end of this username. The NYJ, I'm guessing, is not a New York Jets. Apparently, the Levis sex tape involves lots of mayonnaise as well. All right. Let's get some more picks in. Best Ball Mania 5. We're going to jump into this one. This is a Jefferson Olave neighbors. Derrick Henry, Xavier Worthy, George Kittle, Deontay Johnson, Rashee Rice, Raheem Mostert, Brian Robinson on the clock in the middle of the 11th round. This is one of those ones that has no QB. So this is the area, phonetics the word I'm looking for. That's exactly right. I appreciate when you guys catch me on this. I think Dom did this on an earlier stream this week. I'm sitting here trying to think of the word. It's hard, man. I got my bright light on. I'm trying to carry a stream by myself. Like, it's like, for whatever reason, I lose my train of thought more when I'm doing it on my own. Whereas, like, if you ever see me on pods with other people, I'm trying to talk over everybody, and it's not like I'm ever losing my train of thought. But you put me on my own, and I have to keep talking, and I'm like, I can't think of the word phonetics. Anyway. No QBs, 3 running backs, 6 receivers, 1 tight end on this build so far. So this is, I think, going to be what we'll see commonly with a lot of the builds we're going to look at today. This area of the draft, and a lot of my teams don't have QBs yet. And I'm like, okay, now I got to figure all this out. So the first thing I've been doing is going in and kind of like figuring out if I have late round tight ends I can hit. And one thing this team has going for it is it's a Jefferson team, so I could take McCarthy. It's an Olave team, so I could take Derek Carr. It has Deontay Johnson, so I could take Bryce Young. It has Malik Neighbors, so I could take Daniel Jones. Of all those picks, J.J. McCarthy is the one that I feel the least confident in playing 16 games, which is maybe silly because he was a high first-round pick, but it's probably more just also a little bit of veteran deference. We think the other 3 are definitely starting week 1. The betting odds, the last I saw, had Sam Darnold favored to start over J.J. McCarthy week 1. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but there's at least, like, even if you say McCarthy is a heavy favorite to start, at least like a 25% chance he's not starting early in the season. And then he might also just not be very good. So we got the answer on the username. Sorry, Gretch, it's not a real word, and it's like 2 decades old. If I could take away those 3 scarlet letters at the end, I would love to. So this is some username from like AOL AIM, right? Like 2004, he had some username in AOL Instant Messenger, and now he uses it and is on fantasy football channels where people point out the NYJ, and it is a total scarlet letter. I mean, I hear that. My my ESPN username is still my AOL Instant Messenger username from 2000, from middle school. And it's like I used to listen to rap back then, and it's like West Coast Soldier or something like that is the username, which is I mean, I was a white dude in the suburbs. Like, it's really embarrassing that I just admitted that on stream. But some of my older friends, people in my fantasy league that have played with me in the league that exists on ESPN for 20 plus years, still sometimes refer to that. So, I mean, there you go. It happens to everyone. We all have our we all have our moments. All right. we got the ESPN names. Kit Moses, Manny Fresh 900. You guys, that's exactly how it's spelt. Casey knows what's up, dude. It's so in all of Tupac's titles, it's spelt Soulja. It's, guys, this is embarrassing. All right. We're looking at the QBs. Let them know about the Seattle suburbs hood, Gretch. That's right. I was not from the hood at all. I don't have any QB here that's even worth considering. Herbert, Cousins, Stafford, those are the top ones. I don't have any of those guys. One of the QBs here, Herbert, I do sometimes try to get Josh Palmer, who's gone, and Herbert together. Herbert's the ADP value, or no, he's not even a value. He's at ADP here. I think Palmer's a viable part of that passing game, and if you're near the end, you can sometimes get Palmer and Herbert together at the same time, and then you get your stack and you get your quarterback thing figured out. This is looking like it's, so I have 2 Kansas City receivers on this team. This is a problem I've been creating for myself because I don't have Patrick Mahomes. I have George Kittle, no Purdy at this stage. This is barreling toward a 3 QB late build unless I, hit on something else, but I already have 6 receivers and a tight end. So it's something here that I can then backstack late, but Herbert, Cousins, Stafford, Rodgers would all be unstacked and not their primary receivers. Herbert, I can maybe hit something vaguely primary later. I mean, if you think Quentin Johnston becomes primary somehow, or DJ Chark becomes primary I mean, it's better than like Kirk Cousins. You're obviously not getting the primary guys. Stafford, you're obviously not getting the primary guys. Aaron Rodgers, you're obviously not getting the primary guys. Derrick Henry, Raheem Mostert, and Brian Robinson at running back. All of their quarterbacks are gone. So this is tricky. This is a tricky. I'm getting some Meyer, Minshew late, Herbert and May late stack. I think May is definitely an option here. I'm going to actually throw him in the queue as well because I think I could do some Patriot stuff. But I think this is going to be a build where I could take Jacoby Myers here and make Minshew an option, but I don't really want. This is going to be 3 fragile quarterbacks. I don't really want to bring on the Minshew thing. I was surprised to see my buddy Jacob Sanderson was telling me that he thought Aiden O'Connell was going to start some games. I didn't think so. And then I went and looked at it. He was like pointing me, I think, towards Aiden O'Connell's game log. He finished the year last year. Compare his game log to Will Levis's. Obviously, they had the 63-point game where he had 4 touchdown passes. But he also finished the year, week 17 and 18, 63% completions, 299 yards, 2 TDs, no interceptions. And then week 18, 64.5 completions percentage, 244, 2-0. 4 touchdowns, no picks in those 2 games. Throws for 299 and 244. 63.8 was his lower of the completion percentages. Those are on the better side for a young player. He actually closed the season really intriguingly in 17 and 18, and I started to think, man, maybe they only brought in Minshew because they like O'Connell. Maybe O'Connell's actually going to be their starter. Same head coach that was the interim head coach and then immediately benched Garoppolo to start O'Connell. Like, that was his handpicked guy. That was part of him coming in. Yeah, Charlie agrees. He says Jacob's right. AOC going to start. I was confident Minshew was going to play, but that shook me a little bit. So anyway, I don't think I can do LV Vegas stuff because I think I want to just aim for 3 guys that are going to start 17 games. This is going to look a lot like those teams I just described that I had 3 late round quarterbacks that I didn't like the upside, the Howell Ritter stuff that I did last year. I think I'm going to have to do that again. None of the top pass catchers that are available make any real sense. Quentin Johnston's going to be one of the ones coming up. I could take Herbert and then just grab Johnston, but I don't really want to force that because I don't mind when I'm already invested in Olave, Neighbors, Deontay, Jefferson. I don't mind getting their quarterbacks. This is a team that needs some of the weaker passing games to be good. I mean, that's just the reality, which means to get back to what I'm going to do at this pick, I'm clicking over to tight end. I have not taken TJ Hockenson yet. This is a team that has Jefferson and could make it into a double stack. It has Kittle, so it could float Hockenson until the week 9 bye. And then running back would be the other place I would go. But Nick Chubb is the top running back by ADP. He's 16 picks behind ADP. I did take Chubb around this range once. I mean, once you start to get into I'm at 128. Chubb was going like 90. He's already fallen like 20 picks in ADP. I know there's a lot of stuff with how severe his knee injury was. I don't know that we're probably, unfortunately, ever going to see the same Nick Chubb again. But he is going really, really late, and he is somebody who's an incredible athlete. I mean, one of the things about like I don't understand knee science. Like the people say like Tyjae Spears doesn't have an ACL. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, and Chubb has already come back from major knee injuries at Georgia and then been incredibly efficient. Not saying he's going to do it again. It seems like it would be way harder to do it the second time but like maybe just like the size of his muscles are like, you know how your muscles supposedly support your joints, right? Like maybe the freaking size of Nick Chubb's leg muscles are part of the reason why he doesn't need joints. I don't know. Like maybe there's something physiological there is my point. At a certain point, pick 130. Like, I mean, Nick Chubb at least gives you some late season upside, right? Like I'm probably not going to take him on this build, but I'm talking through how I've taken him in other spots, despite being pretty concerned about that rehab. The price just gets too cheap at a certain point. And maybe I will just take him here. It's either him or Hockenson. Tyler showed up just to say he's going to go touch grass. Tyler, we don't need any of that here. No one else here is touching grass. We're just hanging out. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think this is a Hockenson pick? Set up a double stack with McCarthy? Browns move into a pass-heavy offense. I think that's a fair point. Pick 130 is where you're seeing the slide stop on Chubb. That's where I'm at. Henry Mostert, 2 30-year-old backs already. The last thing I need to do is add Nick Chubb to this running back build. I need a young, like, exciting upside play. I could go down to like a Charbonnet here, and he'd be a fun addition. I do need to start building out this running back room. The top 4 running backs are Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler, Gus Edwards, Ezekiel Elliott. No, there's a lot of age there. This is the pocket I actually really would like to be in. Marshawn Lloyd, Kendre Miller, Jalen Wright. Not right on this team with Mostert. Marshawn Lloyd, Kendre Miller is and I can hit that on the way back, probably. Or Charbonnet. So I could take my running back. We're here at 11:08. I could take my running back at 12:05 to get to 4 and feel like I'm good at 4 through 12. I have 6 receivers. I think the tight end 2, I have not taken Hockenson, like I said, but we're behind ADP. He's another knee rehab guy. This team is, man, I have 2 KC receivers and Jefferson. So I have 3 receivers on a week 7 bye or week 6 bye, plus Mostert, a running back on a week 6 bye. I'm already weak in the flex at week 6. So now my second tight end would have the same bye. That's probably overthinking it. Oh, cool. The little note on Hockenson when I click to go draft him, the little information says no timetable for return 8 days ago. Oh, yeah, that's a good thing to read when you're drafting a player. Yeah, no timetable for the return. This is not my favorite team, but I got Kendra will be fun this year. You guys have an unhealthy amount of Kendra. You guys are going to see me take some Kendra this weekend for sure. Injured guys are just such tough clicks, going to miss most of the season. No idea how fast they'll be up to speed even when they get back. I agree. I'm not clicking them. That's why I sat here and talked about it so long. I ultimately didn't take Chubb. I did take Hockenson, though. I took Hockenson because I'm already basically going to be into J.J. McCarthy in a Viking stack. And where's better tight end upside the rest of the way? I mean, I'm going to wind up with a tight end too. Hawk, earliest he'll be back is week 17. Likeliest return date is 9 to 12. Week 7. Tyler's saying the earliest Hawk will be back is week 7. Likeliest return date is 9 to 12. So I might even be taking a 0 on George Kittle's week 9 bye. I'm willing. I mean, I know his ACL was a late season ACL. I don't think they're going to rush him because I don't think they're going to be hyper competitive this year. I don't love his. That's the first time I've clicked him. I don't think he's actually a very good pick, but it's sort of like if he gets back and gets healthy, if he beats a timetable, if any of that stuff happens, he does provide an upside that most of the tight ends the rest of the way don't. And wouldn't the Chubb bet be similar to Brooks? That's actually a fair point, other than the fact that I think Chubb's knee was multiple ligaments. It was really bad. It's one of the more tough to watch ones that we've seen in a while. I didn't actually ever see Brooks' injury, but from what I understand, it's more of a traditional just ACL tear. And then you have the age thing as well. And that's Alex is saying here. One's young, one's old. And then this is another thing for Chubb. Multiple terrible injuries to the same leg. This is the same one he already had reconstructive knee surgery on in college, I believe. And so I think he had him on both in college. So you have a compound effect and age effect and all of those things. I get your point though, Benjamin. I mean, I know everyone's kind of jumping on you. Like the bet is like, okay, he comes back and he's healthy. So there you go. I mean, Benjamin makes a good counterpoint here to all of us. Like one's proven to be good in the NFL, one hasn't. Like they're not the same. The injury stuff is not the same. It's a lot more risky for Chubb. But his point is that both are going to need probably a little bit of time in the beginning of the year. And your bet is that they get healthy and they play in the second half. I do think we're too certain about injury stuff, like every offseason. We start to read the reports and we get way too confident about things. We did this with Breece Hall and Javonte Williams last year, and Javonte Williams was the multi-ligament one that people were very concerned about, and it ended up being a concern. He was back too quickly from the multi-ligament thing and not efficient. Breece Hall ended up being a god off of an ACL. More straightforward one. And when you talk to the Twitter docs and hear from the Twitter docs, they'll tell you that the multi-ligament stuff is a really big factor to consider in terms of getting back the next year. So, but yeah, this is generally my thought. Vincent's comment: we're usually wrong about injuries in August, and we're still in May. I mean, I'm not, but anyway. I spent a lot of words on this for somebody who just took Hockenson for the first time and has taken Chubb once post-draft. I took him some in the pre-draft, and then I realized I didn't like that. I'm basically trying to suggest that they're draftable, but for the most part, leaving those for other people, for auto drafters. Let's go hit on some more picks. I'm getting on the clock and more. I'm actually, I think, getting further away from getting up to date as I talk. We're 49 minutes in the stream. I think I've made 2 picks. Good Lord. Tyreek Hill, Malik Neighbors, Kyron Williams, Travis Kelce, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, Keon Coleman, Caleb Williams completes the double stack with Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze. Raheem Mostert, Tua Tagovailoa completes a double stack with Raheem Mostert and Tyreek Hill. Tyjae Spears, Dalton Schultz. So this was one where I did hit the QBs a little bit earlier in the QB window. I hit 2. I'm probably going to feel okay with 2 here. I might add a third. I got a rookie and I got a guy with a concussion history. but at a certain point, you have to make some bets. I also took Travis Kelce and Dalton Schultz. Can't believe you're filibustering on the clock. Wonder where you're learning that from. Shout out Stealing Bananas fans. Bindles, welcome, buddy. Crush that like button. I like what you're saying. Like and subscribe. The smart people are telling you to do it. I think you should do it. Travis Kelce and Dalton Schultz. I went and took Schultz 14 picks behind ADP. I think he's a fine pick there as that tight end 2 before the tight end 2 really gets weak. This is exactly what I was talking about with the 2 tight end builds, where if I have Kelce, I'm a little concerned about Kelce. I got him 8 picks behind ADP, though, and he's a smash at pick 45. If I have him, I do want a kind of decent tight end 2 if I'm going to go to a 2 tight end build, but I do think when I get a Schultz, who I feel very comfortable with the routes, I don't think he has a high ceiling, but I feel very comfortable with the floor. They're going to throw a lot. He's going to probably catch a few touchdowns and have some usable weeks. I think this is a fine 2 tight end build, Kelce Schultz. I think it drops off after that, a little bit later in the tight end rooms. And then, Caleb and Tua, I think, is more or less fine. I could, like I said, I have neighbors on this team. Like, I could throw a Daniel Jones in the last round here to get a third. And a big thing with the 3 QBs is to have all 3 of them stacked. I would have a third stacked QB as well. But, and like Vincent says, it's gross after Schultz. That's sort of what I'm trying to get at for sure. What I also was going to say here is when I already have hit the 2 QBs and the 2 tight ends by round 13, what I'm finding is I don't love what I'm looking at with my depth at running back and receiver, which, is naturally going to be the counter to that. The top available receiver right now is Ricky Pearsall. And I only have 5 receivers: Tyreek Hill, Malik Neighbors, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, Keon Coleman. 3 of them are rookies. I haven't done a very good job of building out the receiver depth. This is going to be one of the weakest receiver rooms that I build. At the same time, I took those rookies, pick 21, 69, and 76. I'm obviously investing in their upside in year 1. And I think it's important to draft like you're right in certain ways. And so I'm thinking I can get some help from them. I'm thinking Tyreek Hill and Keenan Allen are pretty strong, stable veterans for volume throughout the year. Top 3 running backs are Kyron, Raheem Mostert, and Tyjae Spears. I'm not going to go to wide receiver here. It's the issue. But the top 5 receivers, 6 receivers by ADP are all rookies as well. This is not a room that likes rookies. It's probably why I wound up with a few other ones. Yeah, I got both Odunze and Coleman decently after ADP. I took Neighbors well ahead of ADP. I took him in the 2nd round in this draft. And this is a funny one. Kyron Williams comes all the way back to the 3rd. So I brought Neighbors up to pick 21 from a 28.8 ADP so I could get a share of Neighbors there. And then Kyron with the pick 21 ADP that I passed fell all the way to pick 28. And so I just had to take Kyron there, it felt like. And then I was just looking at it like, well, I guess I just took Kyron at ADP at pick 21 and I took Neighbors at ADP at pick 28. Alex, good question. Not sure if Kyron is going to survive after that that foot issue. There's been a lot of talk about these early camp issues that are not issues. The coaches don't want to overwork their players, especially their running backs on these thin running back rooms. They're like, yeah, he's got a little bit of an issue. That's why we're not, like, you explain that to the media so that the team doesn't ask questions. Like, why does that guy not have to work as hard as I have to? But nobody wants their running backs working hard right now. I mean, I'm not worried about the foot stuff with Kyron Williams at all, personally, when they're saying it's a non-issue. Anyway, I didn't finish the thought that I have 5 receivers. The top 6 available wide receivers are all rookies as well. Ricky Pearsall, Jalen Polk, Jermaine Burton, Roman Wilson, Troy Franklin, Malachi Corley. I'm going to probably get more rookies on this team because it doesn't seem like they're very well liked. But at the same time, adding rookies with thin paths right now is not going to fix my wide receiver problem. The top running back is Kendre Miller. He's a guy I do really like. It gives me a nice 4th when I'm thin at running back too. Kyron Williams, Raheem Mostert, Tyjae Spears. Adding Kendre Miller there makes me a lot more comfortable that my running backs might be able to help me cover the wide receiver issues. Certainly, I'm hoping my tight ends can help cover that as well a little bit with Dalton Schultz there. Maybe he can hit the flex a little bit for me on this build. But this is the trade-off when you do the 2 early QBs in the window, and you also do what I like to do and take an elite tight end, and then maybe also what I think I would have done differently is not taking Schultz, although I got that great ADP value on him, so maybe that's not a huge issue. But I could have still gotten Marshawn Lloyd and Kendre Miller at this turn. I just took Schultz 14 picks after ADP, but that's where it gets tricky. Maybe it's not take Tua, but I already had 2 Miami guys. You start to take a QB in 8, a QB in 10, and a tight end in 12, and there's not enough wide receivers or running backs in that 8 to 12 range. Like, you got to get some depth there. That's where you got to get your meat and potatoes. So that was a lesson learned in that draft. 27 minutes remaining on this BBM. Let's go jump into that. Tyreek Hill again, a Devon Achane team with Hill. This is one that also could have used Tua, but I don't think I got Tua. Oh, he's not off the board yet. Tyreek Achane, Stephon Diggs, Trey McBride, Amari Cooper, Jordan Addison, Aaron Jones, JSN, Jordan Love. So I took Jordan Love. Is a kind of a weird pick for me there. 9 picks behind ADP, so that was part of it. I starred Dontavian Wicks and Luke Musgrave, so I'm thinking about playing Musgrave through my tight end 2. I'm thinking about adding Wicks depth at wide receiver, and I knew that I was going to be trying to push Tua. I'm remembering this now. I'm up at 118 at 10-10, and I knew I wasn't going to pick from that Love pick at 99 until 118. I could have tried to push Tua all the way there, but what I told myself is if Tua doesn't come, I'm going to wish I took a QB here. If he does come, I can go Love and then Tua, and I can still backstack Love and make this another 2 QB build. So I'm taking Tua here. He gets back to my 118. I get my Tua, Achane, Tyreek, Miami thing. I already have the Amari bring back on that. Pretty much good with the Miami stuff. Now I'm building out the second stack when I took this value on Love. Wicks has been going crazy high. I think I'm in on Dontavian Wicks as much as anybody, but I think people are overdoing the excitement on him. He very well might go here, even though his ADP shows 132.9. I'm not positive he's going to come back to 123, but both of these guys don't have a QB. I didn't even check if they have any stacks with Tua, but I think you got to take Tua there when you have the Achane Tyreek thing. If Wicks doesn't come back, then I really have to prioritize Musgrave. I don't have to get both. I'm hoping to get Wicks on the way back here to build out that Love thing. And I will take Musgrave as my tight end 2 as well. And then I'd really like this build. So yeah, that one's coming together well. Let's do an Eliminator pick. That's at the top of the queue here. We are at 8-12. So back-to-back picks here. This is the Tyreek Hill 101 Eliminator I had. Tyreek, Nico, Malik Neighbors, Keenan Allen, Dalton Kincaid, Ladd McConkey, JSN. So we've gone 6 receivers through 7 rounds, 1 tight end. We've spread out the buys. Again, I wrote a whole thing about Eliminator strategy. I really like this Eliminator so far because I was able to get picks that I wanted to take while also spreading the buys. I've actually taken, of my 7 picks, a player from 7 of the 8 weeks where there is a buy. So I have a week 5 buy, a 6, a 7, a 10, an 11, a 12, and a 14. I don't have a week 9, which is the hardest one to hit. That's only San Francisco and Pittsburgh in week 9. That makes San Francisco a really fun team to target. That's one of the little nuggets I had in my article. Several little things about that, how you want to play the buys, how you want to build why this 0 RB structure that I took here would be a strategy I would have. Go check that out at bengresh.substack.com. I do, at this stage, with all these wide receivers, want to consider quarterback and also running back. I don't really love the running backs. My top running back here is probably Javonte. It's either Javonte or Trey Benson. I haven't. I mean, I guess I'm out on Tony Pollard just because of all the stuff I said about Will Levis and not liking Tennessee's offense. I'd rather play that backfield through Tyjae Spears 30 picks later or whatever it is. Oh, you know what? The Eliminator is a good format for. Well, it's probably not the best format for Jaden Daniels. I was going to say it's a good format for him because you don't really need to stack him and you can still get upside. Because one of the intriguing things about an Eliminator is if you stack, you're stacking buys and you're putting a lot of eggs in one basket. And you need to be consistent throughout the year. The other side of it is you do have a 115-person final at the end, and you still want to play it a little bit like, you know, the week 17 is all that matters mindset. You want to have 1 week upside in week 17. So getting like a Jaden Daniels, a mobile quarterback, if he plays all year, can give you quarterback upside all year without the stack element being a huge necessity because of the rushing value, right? But it also is risky from a injury standpoint. I still think you want to stack your quarterback. And so the other two quarterbacks ahead of him are Dak and Caleb. And I have Keenan Allen on this team. So a single stack with a Caleb Keenan Allen thing for a little 1 week upside late is something I'm considering here. I don't mind continuing to push the 0 RB build really far in this format, which might mean taking even a 7th receiver, or more practically, David Njoku feels like the best pure pick here for me. Bowers is off the board, and Njoku's definitely the last of a tier at tight end at this point. Dallas Goedert behind him, Hockenson, Schultz. We were talking about those guys are kind of the last ones, but Njoku's one that I actually think is mispriced a little bit and is a nice value. He gives me a bring back on Tyreek as well for a little, week 17 upside scenario. It would really strengthen my tight end room in a way that this is going to be a late round running back. I have to hit QB here too. Benjamin asks, haven't had a chance to read the article yet. What are your stands on weeks 12 and 14 for the Eliminator? So I think the first level thing is you want to consider the early weeks because it's easier to advance. The early week buys, it's easier to advance through those weeks. Your pod advance rate is higher and the pods are weaker because obviously the field gets whittled down. So later in the season, your pods are full of better teams and the advance rate is lower. It gets exponentially tougher throughout the year to advance. And so if you have a lot of buys stacked late, it's going to be hard to advance. That's the first order of thought, right? Second order of thought is if you start getting a bunch of values in an eliminator draft that push you towards stacking weeks 12 and 14, it's worth noting that if you go out week 12, you make $50 on a $10 entry. If you go out week 14, you make $100 on a $10 entry. You 5x and 10x on those 2 weeks. And so I do think there's an argument to be made that in certain drafts, for some portion of your portfolio, as you get going, you could stack those weeks, maximize the potential that you actually reach those weeks. What I wrote in the article is I wouldn't want to stack my onesies. I wouldn't stack both my QBs in week 12 and only do a 2 QB build. I'd want at least still an out to get through those weeks because you might get a weak pod. Even if you have stacked a bunch of week 12s, if you are at least able to make a starting lineup, maybe you run into a team that has injuries and gets a 0 at QB. You want to give yourself a chance to get through. But by stacking those weeks, you're playing it a little bit more like a cash game. You're kind of expecting that if you do get there, you're probably going to go out at that point. But it gives you an interesting opportunity to build part of your portfolio as sort of the swings at this 5x and 10x sort of cash game mentality where if you're not using any buys in the first 11 weeks, it should help you advance. And there's no guarantee you're even going to get to week 12 or week 14, right? That's still tough to do. That's why that's 5x and 10x at those stages. But that's an important consideration on the late season buys as well. Benjamin mentions, I think it's a tourney for a good ROI. I think it is too. I think people are going to misplay it. I think you want to stack one way or the other a little bit. One of the things I also wrote about is if you do go the early buy route, I think you're playing to win the tournament. And so then you should try to hit on even more early buys and spread them out. But, I was looking at that with Dak here at the top. He's a week 7 buy. It's a good buy to target. There's only 2 teams on buy there, Dallas and Chicago. But I just can't really stack him after this point. Brandon Cooks. I already have Caleb Williams, actually. That's what I was thinking. So I'm going to go, in this draft, I'm going to go Caleb Williams and David Njoku. So I'm going to start to build in a little bit of quarterback upside. We'll see what I do at quarterback. This might end up being a 3 quarterback build as well. I already have 6 receivers I like. I got the tight end position strong as well. Dom agrees with that. I appreciate that, Dom. It's tough. It's, I'm pushing the 0 RB even further, but my hope is, and I wrote about this in the article, that when I build this way, I'm building floor through an imbalance, through the redundancy and the contingency depth that I've built at receiver, at tight end, and I hopefully will have enough at QB as well. And I'm admitting that yes, running back's going to be weak, but that actually creates a type of floor. You don't create floor through being balanced. You create floor through an imbalance, actually, in this case. All right. Again, I wrote it out better in the article than I can explain it in a few minutes here. We're going to fire off a few more of these. We're going to spin the wheel in a minute here. I got to take my daughter to soccer practice in about an hour. So we got a little more time, but I got to move faster than I am. Next draft, Puka Nacua, Garrett Wilson. This was the one where I was like, man, I got both Puka and Garrett Wilson together. That is nice. Devonta, Trey McBride, Xavier Worthy. I went Trey McBride over Jalen Hurts. Probably a mistake. I debated that. When you get Devonta there in the third, maybe you just want to stack up the Eagles. Xavier Worthy, I take Anthony Richardson in the sixth. I think at a little bit of an ADP value. Yeah, 7-pick ADP value. Not one you absolutely have to stack up, and so I felt like I could play him backwards a little bit. Chicago says, what's the wheel about? First-time watcher? Oh, you're in for it. No, I've done 3 shows, and I've only spun it once. My hit rate on the wheel is very, very low, but we'll get to it in a minute. It's not that exciting. Are we overthinking A.J. Brown? First half of the season looked like he should have gone top 3. Yeah, second half of the season it looked like he should have gone in the 5th round. So I think he's going too high a little bit, personally. I mean, maybe we are. He's really good, but the second half of the season matters too. You know what I mean? I'll also mention, we talked about this a little bit on Stealing Bananas. I don't even know if that episode's come out, but the NFC East episode will be coming out the next day or a couple days or whatever. More thoughts there if you want to. My projections will be out. I haven't projected him yet. I haven't done a full-on projection or anything. I think he's I talked through this on the Stealing Bananas. I would recommend checking that out. It'll be easier one to get fuller thoughts on. I think he probably belongs in like the middle of the second round, I think is what I said on the show, and kind of talking through it with Sean. Appreciate you. Yeah, Hurts was banged up. We talked through this. We talked through a lot of this stuff. This is a good question, good line of thought, but I want to stay on task here with this draft. Anthony, that's a good question. I love the tangential questions. I just have to protect myself because I could talk about A.J. Brown for a half an hour right now. All right. Anthony Richardson, Rashee Rice, DeAndre Swift, Brock Bowers was the rest of that build. So I have 1 QB. I only have 1 running back. I have 2 tight ends. Nathan says that pod is out, by the way. So you can find that at the Stealing Bananas podcast feed. Anthony Richardson, DeAndre Swift is my only running back. I do have the 2 tight ends, Trey McBride and Brock Bowers, and I have 5 receivers, both Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice on this team, which, again, I've run into this problem a little bit. I didn't take the Devonta Smith stack. I do already have Anthony Richardson, so I don't have a bunch of stack issues at QB, and I've starred now Matthew Stafford and Aaron Rodgers, who are the Puka Nacua and Garrett Wilson options, obviously. So that'll probably be my QB2 on this team. The other guys I've starred are Adonai Mitchell and Josh Downs. And that's kind of where we're at here on Adonai Mitchell, where it's 111. He's going 118. To get Richardson a stack with his athletic rookie, I'd probably have to take him now. I like Downs, but I can't be sure Downs is going to come back to 130. I'd be fine taking them both. I only have 5 receivers at this point. The only reason I wouldn't is Javonte Williams is the top player by ADP. I can get a little bit of an ADP discount on a guy that I really like. Have Richardson, have only DeAndre Swift as the running back. So, the RB2 is an important spot. I disagree that I don't feel forced to take a running back here. It's the chat says feel almost forced to take a running back there. I mean, a little bit. It's a good pocket for running back, but I think the wide receiver 6 is equally important. Maybe not as the RB2, but Mitchell is the second receiver by ADP. The fact that the idea that only 1 receiver would go I don't have to take Mitchell. But then Downs is a popular pick. He sometimes gets pulled way up. A lot of picks till I'm up again. I do want to take Javonte. But I think the prudent thing is to take Mitchell on this team and get the stack locked in. He's probably the bigger upside swing than Downs anyway, as much as I think Downs was good last year. Like Mitchell is a guy they really liked adding and they talked really favorably about after the draft. Really athletic, etc. We're going to take Mitchell onto this team. Don't have Pittman. Need to get him stacked up. Need to get Richardson stacked up. All right. Man, it's hard to pass on a value of Javonte Williams. We talked about Javonte a lot on the last episode. For those of you who missed that, go check it out. Bijan, Devontae Adams, DK Metcalf, Travis Kelce, Xavier Worthy, Kyle Pitts, Keon Coleman, DeAndre Swift, Tyler Lockett, Javonte Williams, Kirk Cousins, Xavier Legette. We're in round 13 on this team. It's already got a QB in Kirk Cousins with Bijan and Pitts. I only have 3 running backs. I do have 6 receivers. I grabbed Xavier Legette last round, and part of that was I was, again, having stack issues. Surprise, surprise. I've thrown Geno Smith in my queue. This is where we're at, because I did take both DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett kind of without noticing. But I don't feel great about Geno playing all 17 games. I feel okay about it, much stronger than some of the other conversations we've had. But Sam Howell's, I think, interesting that they brought him in, and new coordinator, new head coach, knew all of that stuff. If Geno struggles, he could get benched. It wouldn't be that crazy, especially for a young guy. Took the 2 tight ends. I'm going to be done there. Kelce and Pitts. This is either a running back pick to get to my RB4. I could do a wide receiver 7 here as well. And Darnell Mooney is one of the top available. I can just throw on another Atlanta piece. Bijan, Pitts, and Mooney. But I don't feel I need to there. Quarterback 2, I'm going to push. It's going to be Geno or Young later. Stafford and Rodgers are both available, but there's not really a way. I don't have either of them stacked, and there's not really a way to backstack those guys easily. Running back's already thinning out. Ty Chandler is the best available. I still think he's a pretty solid handcuff, to be honest, in terms of probably getting a little bit of playing time alongside Aaron Jones, who's probably not going to be a huge every down guy. And then I think probably being the guy they like the most if Aaron Jones were to miss time. Marshawn Lloyd went 1 pick ahead of me, 6 picks behind ADP. Lloyd is a guy that I really like at that price. So I feel bummed about that. But I'm going to take Ty Chandler on this team. We don't need a QB2 right now. We're going to grab the RB4. We're good at tight end. I think we're good there. Couple questions. Josh Downs or Jermaine Burton in Dynasty? Probably the uncertainty of Burton, but I don't really do Dynasty ranks explicitly, so I wouldn't trust my take on that. Super hard. Thoughts on Bryce Young rebounding with a vengeance this year? I think I wouldn't say with a vengeance, but I think he's a reasonable play at cost that, Dave Canales can get some things going, and his wide receiver room was truly terrible last year. That Deontay Johnson and Xavier Legette add a lot to that. Meatwad says deep ball guy with AR, probably go Burr. So I want to get more AD Mitchell now that his ADP seems stabilized. That's kind of what I'm thinking too. He's fallen. He was going too high. He's fallen now to a range where he's outside the prime 0 RB running back targets. He's definitely outside the tight ends that you need. He's outside the prime, the wide receiver window. Why do I not feel great about Geno? Sam Howell's EPA was so bad. Sam Howell took a ton of sacks, more than he should have. Didn't get a lot of help at his pass catchers. I thought he was better than his EPA will tell you he was. And Geno wasn't amazing last year. He had some issues at times last year. He's been good. He was good the year prior. He's been good since he took over for Seattle. But I'd said I feel a lot better about Geno playing the whole year than most of the other guys. Yeah, good point here by White Lancer as well. Love Chandler behind one of the oldest starters in the league, age-wise. Definitely makes sense. All right, let's get into a few more picks. Actually, we got 7 there, 8. Oh, we got more than that. But we're gonna do the wheel. We're gonna jump into the wheel. For those of you guys who don't know what the wheel is, it's pretty simple. Spinning a wheel of teams. We are going, whatever team we land on, we're going to remember some guys. We're going to talk about some dudes. We did Tampa last time. We got some work done. We got some Mike Allstott. I'm going to start naming some guys. I'm expecting you guys in the chat to be firing off some fun, old-timey dudes to remember from, I don't know, the 2000s, the 2010s, probably the fantasy football era, probably more of a lean toward offensive players, but whatever you're feeling, man. And then we're going to look at that team a little bit from last year, talk about some of the stats and things that maybe are misleading. When we talked about Tampa last year, we talked a little bit about how last time we did this, talked a little bit about how inefficient Rachaad White was and how that makes him a pretty fragile pick, kind of a true dead zone running back. In that regard, we showed how Chris Godwin's stat line was actually fairly similar to Mike Evans, other than the TDs. And Mike Evans had 13 TDs on 28 total TD passes, caught almost half the team's TDs, which I think makes Mike Evans a little fragile, even though we know he's a TD producer. That's a lot. It's a hard thing to do year over year. They're not throwing 40 like they were with Brady. They threw 28, and Godwin only had like 2, and that was the big gap between Evans and Godwin. You could also, I think, make a case that Godwin probably catches a few more touchdowns this year from that 2 number. So it'll be stuff like that as we kind of look through some of the trends. Maybe there's some more advanced stuff on the pass rates, and it's kind of like what we talked about with the Titans earlier and how their level looks and those things. So let's see who we get. Oh, the Chargers are a fun one. You got the best. You got the best running back in fantasy football history in LaDainian Tomlinson, I think. Lance Allworth. Good Lord. We're starting in the 1970s. Kellen Winslow. Dan Fouts. LT is my immediate thought there. Man, we did Vincent Jackson, RIP, on the Bucs show. We can do Vincent Jackson here again. Oh, man, we got all those receivers. Denario Alexander. God, you can go back to David Boston. Did they have Chris Chambers for a while? They had so many random wide receivers. Gates was a revelation, an absolute fantasy, like where he came out of and what he was able to continue to do. I mean, I remember the early Gates years. It was like, this is awesome. And then he was just a freaking Hall of Famer. That was incredible. Natron Means, Visor. We got Rivers, Breeze, Flutie Trio. That's a good call. The QBs were good. Kellen Winslow, Gates. Priest Holmes or LT. Priest Holmes' peak was very short. So that's why I say LT. Priest Holmes didn't hit until later in his 20s. He started his career with the Ravens, and then he was awesome. I mean, he was so much fun, but LT was like a whole career, early in his career, all the way through late in his career. He was a number 1 pick in fantasy for so many years, and consistently really, really strong. Sean Merriman, dude, he was fun for a while. The lights out or whatever. Early career, Michael Turner. Michael Turner was like the 1B to LaDainian Tomlinson's 1A for a while, and then Atlanta signed him to a big deal. Got a lot of work with Atlanta. Who I gotta look up. I gotta look up some of their wide receivers. I'm actually gonna go look it up. Oh yeah, early Sproles too. We got early Darren Sproles. He was a little bowling ball for them too. Who's the one? Is it? I don't know if Denarius Moore. I said Denario Alexander. Maybe he's the dude I'm thinking of. But like in these years, 2008, who were there? Oh, Malcolm Floyd just hit me. Oh, Mike Tolbert. that was a dude. I don't know if we already mentioned him in the chat. Chris Chambers was on this team. Vincent Jackson, RIP. Then we have Denario Alexander in one of these years popping up. Craig Davis. It's not that year. Let's go ahead a couple years. 2011, maybe. Patrick Creighton, Vincent Brown, Billy Volek. I had him. Ryan Matthews. Remember Ryan Matthews? He was like the 12th overall pick. There's Denaro Alexander. He was going to be the truth. Didn't pan out. Ladarius Green. Seyi Ajira Tutu. Eddie Royal. Just saying. These are fun. Oh, yeah. Late round Woodhead. That's a good one. Yeah. Priest Holmes' peak was the best peak. I agree with that. 2 to 3 TDs every week. Kasim Oz good. Vincent Jackson was a beast. Fun Chargers teams in those eras. A lot of good running backs we just named, man. A lot of the most impactful, like early PPR backs. You mentioned Woodhead. We said Sproles, Turner, even Tolbert for that stretch. And then you have LT as like the main guy, Ryan Matthews. A lot of fun ones. All right. But let's jump to the Chargers roster, I guess. And you know what's funny is I want to look at the PFR page when we try to talk through like 2024 expectations for a lot of these types of teams, but I don't know what we can even learn, right? Because we're all expecting a very different offense. I don't know the best way to pull up Jim Harbaugh's tendencies, but everyone knows he's been way more run leaning than pass leaning. While he was the guy in San Fran, they did have a mobile QB for most of it. A lot of Colin Kaepernick or even Alex Smith had more mobility than Justin Herbert. But even in college, very run heavy, even with like a JJ McCarthy, not like the most mobile quarterback. I would expect the offense to be more similar to what they were doing in recent years in Michigan. So yeah, like pulling up the data from last year is not going to be super, indicative of anything. For this team, I think the interesting thing is to go to their depth chart. I like to, so one of the things I said when we do this team thing, I'm going to kind of show you guys how I like to look through stuff, show you the sites I use, all that kind of stuff. I get questions all the time. Where do you get your depth chart stuff? Where do you get this? Where do you get that? Hopefully it'll all kind of naturally come up. But so I go to Our Lads for basically every depth chart thing that I want to look at. They're fantastic over there. They do a great job of keeping it up to date. The way this is listed is everything on the left is the starters, the very left column. So like the top 3 there are their 3 receiver positions: left wide receiver, right wide receiver, slot wide receiver. That's what they're predicting right now is Joshua Palmer, Quentin Johnson, and Ladd McConkey are your starters. The point that I'm trying to drive home, obviously, is the ball's got to go to somebody. Even if they don't throw a lot, even if we know they're going to be run heavy, it's got to go somewhere. Ladd McConkey is either going to be a really good rookie. Josh Palmer is an intriguing guy. We did the yards per route run database. Some people know that I'm not a huge fan of Josh Palmer's throughout his career. I'm going to really quickly jump over to the yards per route run database to show you guys Palmer's last couple of years. You have in 2021 and 2022, 1.20, 1.24 yards per out run. Those are poor numbers. Poor yards targets per out run and poor yards per target will equal a poor yards per out run. Last year, elevates the targets per out run to 17.5%, despite a good Keenan Allen year. So a couple of these years, one of my big issues was you had both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams out for some of this time, and he couldn't step up and earn volume. Earns a little more volume last year at a higher ADOT alongside Keenan Allen. Best weighted targets per out run of his career. This isn't good, but it's not bad. 9.7 yards per target, 1.71 yards per route run. Again, not great, but not bad. Maybe a little bit of a move forward in year 3, and he's somebody that I'm at least interested in because of the depth chart stuff that I think is the big story for the Chargers. And again, as we talk through these teams, I'm going to kind of just say what I think is the big story, I guess. Palmer, QJ was really, really bad. I know you guys have probably seen the Matt Harmon stuff where it's like, I mean, he's trying to be as positive as he can, and that's one of the great traits about Harmon, but he's basically saying that he's, in a really poor cohort. It's probably not his fault, but had a really tough rookie year. Tough to see a huge breakout in year 2. They might try to make that work. They might think they have more than they actually do because, we've joked a little bit. Jim Harbaugh got absolutely torched by him in the college football playoff 2 years ago when Quentin Johnson was still at TCU.
Lad McConkey though, and see, I think DJ Chark's a reasonable late round guy too, because if it's not Johnston, if it's not Palmer, there's a lot of room for Chark to move into this. I don't know about if I would go down to like Darius Davis or Brendan Rice. There's not a lot there. And then you go look at tight end. Will Disley got a lot of money, but Hayden Hurst also got brought in. They do have Donald Parham. I mean, even if you follow the money, I don't know that I can really take a lot of Will Disley. That's a tricky tight end room in terms of whether that's going to put any, pressure on the receivers to do anything other than get all the targets. And then you go look at the running back room. J.K. Dobbins is coming off an Achilles tear last year and a bunch of other injuries prior to that. Gus Edwards, we are going to go to Pro Football Reference for Gus Edwards to talk through his profile, because he gets talked about a lot in ways that I don't think are really the way that I would talk about him. I don't think he's like bad. I think he's like a solid dude, but like, so one thing on Pro Football Reference, they list his draft status up here at the top, but he didn't get drafted. So he was a UDFA. You go look at his career numbers. I got this up, right? Yeah. So I just want to point out the yards per attempt column. It's not the best column in the world, but 2018 as a 23-year-old, 5.2 yards per attempt. He's really efficient. He only caught 2 passes that first year. 24-year-old, 5.3 yards per attempt. He only catches 7 passes. He's an efficient rusher. 25-year-old, 5.0 yards per attempt. He only catches 9 passes. Again, efficient rusher. Then he has the ACL tear, misses his age 26 season in 2021. In 27, he's back. He has 5.0 yards per carry again. Doesn't even catch a pass that year. But he does that on a career low 87 rushes because he only plays 9 games that year at age 27. And so you see, like, he's continued to be an efficient rusher, but also, do we really buy this in an extreme way? Because he didn't have a huge sample here. And he's also just never added anything as a receiver, like never caught 10 passes. Last year, he ends up catching 12, first time in his career over 10. Totally different offense, not the Greg Roman offense that everyone says that he's played in. It was the Todd Monken offense. All under Greg Roman, he caught 18 passes in 4 years. What he also did last year was he rushed for a career high 810 yards and then 13 touchdowns in Baltimore on 198 carries, which was a huge career high for him as well at age 28. And that's awesome, man. Great career year. Pumped for him about that. The YPC did fall all the way down to 4.1 yards per carry from 5+ in the 4 other years of his career. This is a guy who's thrived on rush attempt efficiency because he adds nothing as a passer. And then goal line work is where he got a ton of value here. But the fact that the efficiency fell off in a Lamar Jackson offense, we know the mobile quarterbacks add to the efficiency level of the runners. I'm worried he's going to be in the low 4s again. This offense isn't going to score enough for him to have 13 touchdowns. He's still not going to catch passes. And he's 28. I mean, now he's going to be 29. He's already turned 29. He turned 29 in April. So at this point, I'm pretty concerned that he can be a major piece for a full season of fantasy football, largely because I think people think he was more of a piece than he ever was at other points in his fantasy career. He's been interesting with these 700-yard rush seasons and the touchdowns, especially. He has 4 700-plus yard rush seasons, but his career high last year, 810 rush yards. And you're not getting anything receiving. So it's all about the TDs. It's all about the rush efficiency that might fall off late career. He's already had some injuries. Fun dude to watch. Not a guy that I'm drafting. As a result, the chat's already kind of getting there. I'm seeing, we're going to go back through some of your guys' comments as well, but Kamani Vidal becomes one of the most intriguing late round running backs in the whole thing, right? Because you have behind Dobbins and Edwards, you have Isaiah Spiller, you have Elijah Dotson, Jarrett Patterson. These are guys that have been intriguing but are kind of flameouts. I had mentioned on one pod at one point, I think I'd be intrigued in pulling an Isaiah Spiller lever in case Kamani Vidal isn't the guy to challenge Dobbins and Edwards. But I really have a hard time seeing how Dobbins off the Achilles and Edwards at that age are the guys. Maybe they are. Maybe they get a lot of work and they're just inefficient. Maybe the Chargers are just worse than expected. But Vidal, I think, is the path to upside, to excitement, to earning work because he was just better or more efficient than the guys ahead of him. And then, Justin Herbert, I think, is the last thing I would talk about with this offense. I think he provides a floor And then and I guess, you have Rashawn Slater at left tackle. You went and drafted Joe Alt at right tackle. Their offensive line is going to be better. It's going to be really good. And you're going to have Herbert behind it, working off of play action. It's going to be a run-heavy offense. That's Greg Roman's whole thing. Very, very run-heavy. They brought him in. Harbaugh has worked with him before, knows that. His brother was working with him, obviously, for years in Baltimore. So you expect that out of the offense, but you also expect the potential for high efficiency in the pass game off of the run, the play action, some of that stuff should be helpful, frankly, for the pass game. So I think the vertical high ADOT guys are intriguing to me. That's why I like Palmer a little bit. That's why I'm willing to even take some shots on DJ Chark and maybe even willing to take some shots on Quentin Johnston, because you start thinking about these play action shot plays, explosive plays, and you think about how best ball works, and you're just looking for usable weeks and explosive plays. So mixing in those guys when you have a Justin Herbert quarterback and you have a good offensive line and should have the time to drop back and do some of the play action and throw downfield, I think is intriguing, even though it's not a very good pass game. The volume does have to go somewhere. And then the running back room, I mean, all of the skill position rooms are really pretty weak here. If Malik Neighbors was here, he might be going ahead of Marvin Harrison, frankly, because it'd be easy to project him for a lot of work. All right. I'm going to jump back a little bit in the chat and see if there was any more fun. Remember some guys that I missed. Jacoby Jones is a guy who ruined many leagues with my friends. No one remembers Melvin Gordon, Joshua says. I like that. That's pretty funny. Wes Welker, Chargers legend. Got a question about what's their play on their backfields considering ADPs. Hopefully I just hit on that pretty comfortably. Scary downside for the Chargers. I agree with this. Like actual worst record in the league downside. I don't think it happens because of the quarterback play on the offensive line, and I do think they're a competent coaching staff. But I think there's more downside than people are willing to kind of admit. White Lancer's with me, reluctantly capitulating on Palmer. That's where we're at, guys. We're reluctantly capitulating on Josh Palmer. Let's see. Only Chargers I feel good taking is Ladd, Herbert, and Vidal. I think that's a fair position as well. Palmer, I feel better than even Quentin Johnston, just mixing in Palmer because he's run a lot of routes for them too. They like, I think, the things that he does as like a blocker and stuff. I feel pretty confident he'll get routes. And so if he has, a little bit of efficiency upside, which he showed, I think, in year 3, he's at least a nice piece in a wide receiver build in best ball. Probably not a season-long pick for me, Josh Palmer. Not somebody that I'm like thinking I'll be starting in start-sit situations when I'm building these wide receiver heavy teams. But I've learned the value of that type of pick in best ball. Agreed on the things not to like about Gus. He's a great runner, though, and that Chargers left side is stacked behind Alt. I mean, I could be wrong on that. I mean, this is a fair point. Like, he's a downhill runner, and I just talked about how good the offensive line is, and they do know how to scheme up a running attack with Harbaugh and Roman. Like, they're going to have those guys, like, whatever their blocking things are, how they pull their linemen and stuff. I don't know all the details, but they're good at it. They're good at it. They get the blocks sealed, and they create good open lanes. My UW Huskies saw that in the national championship against Michigan. They had 3 long runs on their first 3 drives. I think runs of 40-plus yards on each of their first 3 drives in that game, 2 of them for touchdowns. And you saw the replays, and you're like, man, they blocked up these lanes where, like, I could have ran through them. I mean, it's just luckily UW was able to make some adjustments and get some stops after that, but that's something that should have been on tape, and kind of pissed me off that we didn't have an answer for that as a Huskies fan right away. 3 long explosive runs. See, I think this is where I do land though with Vincent. If they don't have Lamar, Gus probably isn't relevant. Like I feel, and especially with the injury risk and the age and some of that stuff, maybe I'm overstating the injury risk. He hasn't had a ton of work in his career, and he's not that old. He's 29. He's not like 32. I've taken older running backs. I've been drafting Raheem Mostert for crying out loud. Interesting conversation around Gus. It's making me consider drafting him, I think. But I worry about how much Lamar has helped his efficiency in his career. Has Spiller actually ever produced when he starts? No. What we'd be buying is that he had a decent prospect profile and he was a productive player at Texas A&M. We would not be buying really anything that he's not at the NFL level. All right. That's what I got for I almost just closed the StreamYard studio. That would have been funny. I would have just accidentally canceled or ended the stream. That would have been strong stuff. I'm trying to close this. We're going to go back to sharing the screen, looking at some drafts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 left. Perfect. I am going to hop on. Thanks for the stream. Have a good weekend. I'm actually going to take a few more draft picks here. Appreciate you thanking me, though. Everyone who's watching, like, subscribe, notifications, fun stuff. We're going to hit on these last 10 picks before my daughter's soccer, which is at the top of the hour. It's right around the corner. It's actually at 12:10 my time. I have to leave at about 12. So I'm going to be closing down this stream in about 24 minutes. We're going to get all 10 of these picks done. I promise you that, which means I have broken that promise multiple times, but it means I might not answer as many questions. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. I'm going to start firing these off. Chihuahua is the closest one to time it out. Let's go look at it. It's a 1-3-5-1 build at this stage. Is a Bijan team. Chris Olave, Devonta Smith, Trey McBride, Terry McLaurin, Marquise Brown, Jackson Smith and Jigba, DeAndre Swift, Kelly. Thanks for the faith, man. Unlikely? That's definitely unlikely. Jackson Smith and Jigba, DeAndre Swift, Jane Daniels, Brian Robinson. So I grabbed Brian Robinson with the Jane Daniels thing that I already had going with Terry McLaurin. We got 3 Washington players. It's a 1-3-5-1. This is a spot where you can grab another receiver. Joshua Palmer, we were just talking about, is sitting there. I also like Chase Brown here, but there's more there's not a ton of running back value. And I got Dontavian Wicks maybe. Back up in 6 picks. Wicks has been going so high that this is like ADP value on him. I've taken a bunch of Palmer already. Washington gets Atlanta. So I also have I built the Washington thing out with the Bijan stack. What am I doing at QB2? Olave. I could do JSN with Geno. I don't have any other options there. Oh, Herbert's here. Okay, I'm going to take Palmer. If Herbert comes back around, he becomes a pretty obvious QB2. It's very fitting. We just got done talking about the Chargers here. Palmer adds a nice wide receiver 6 element to this build. We're going to pass up some of the running back value here and take my QB2 if he gets back. If not, we'll hit a running back. Or maybe, if Herbert goes, we got Chase Brown I want to throw in there. I want to throw Wicks in here. I want to throw Sharbs in here. Those are some dudes that I'm going to consider on the way back in about 6 picks. If all 4 of those first 4 go, then I weep into my pillow tonight. All right. Best Ball Mania. Up in the 13th round, we have a 2-2-6-2. Another one of those ones I talked about at the top where I went 2 earlier quarterbacks. This is a Love Purdy, 2 earlier tight ends. This is a Laporta Kittle. Got the Purdy Kittle thing going. Love is stacked only with Christian Watson at this point. But all I have at running back is Jonathan Taylor and Nick Chubb. This is the one where I took Chubb, 20 picks after ADP. At the time I took him, his ADP has fallen even a little bit more, as we saw. He's at a 111 now. It was at 109 when I took him. I took him at 129. I need another running back. I have Jalen Wright in the queue. He would be a Miami bring back on, I guess, Chubb. I think what happened with the queue is I started a number of running backs to kind of tell myself you need to take whichever running back falls. It probably included Marshawn Lloyd and Kendre Miller, who both went between my last 2 picks. I took Xavier Legette with my last pick. But then I probably start a bunch of running backs and said, okay, you took your wide receiver 6 because you wanted to get Legette, but make sure you'd get a running back 3 on your next pick. please. And so I'm going to take Wright, and then I'm going to do the same exact trick. I want Kamani Vidal. If we get back to that spot, I'm going to take Vidal on this team because we just got done talking about him. But he has a better shot of coming back to me at 160. His ADP is 159. Probably won't make it back. But I'm going to take Jalen Wright here. Actually, probably, man, I need a early season running back production there because Wright's not going to give me that and Chubb's not going to give me that. So probably Ty Chandler was the right pick there, or Ray Davis becomes a smart pick because I think he's going to be worked in early. We got work to do at running back there. That's what happens when you take the 2 early QBs and the 2 early tight ends. We talked about this earlier. All right. Next draft. Garrett Wilson, Drake London, T. Higgins, Derrick Henry, Terry McLaurin, George Kittle, Ramondre Stevenson, Jonathan Brooks. 0-3-4-1. I haven't figured out anything with stacks yet here. Purdy's the best quarterback by ADP, second best player by ADP overall. I only have the 4 receivers. The guy behind me has no reason to take Brock Purdy. Has already taken Stroud. Only has 3 receivers. Probably wants a double tap receiver. So the top 3 guys available by ADP: Curtis Samuel, Brock Purdy, Mike Williams. I'm at 9:11, and I'll be back on the clock at 10:02. I think this turn is Purdy plus a receiver. I already have 3 running backs at this stage and only 4 receivers. I got to hit a receiver. I could theoretically go receiver. But I think Purdy makes sense. But I'm going to push him around if I can. I don't think the guy on the turn takes him. So I'm going to take the ADP value on Curtis Samuel. I think he's a nice wide receiver 5 in a build where you – this is hilarious. Garrett Wilson, Drake London, T. Higgins all have week 12 buys. I just took Curtis Samuel with the week 12 buy. He's a nice wide receiver 5 when you only have 4 through this point. It's not so nice when you just took your 4th week 12 buy at wide receiver. Crushing it. Probably should have went to Mike Williams, who also has a week 12 buy. All right. Man, all of the next 3 receivers also had week 12 buys. So even if I noticed that, I don't know what I would have done. Curtis Samuel, Mike Williams, Khalil Shakir, Rashid Shaheed were the receivers I had available here. Sometimes you just suck it up and wear the buys. We're going to jump into this puppy draft. This one's in round 11. This is one where I haven't hit the early QBs. I did 2 early tight ends, Kittle and Bowers. 0-3-5-2. Only 5 receivers, but Jamar Chase, Neighbors, Kirk, Keenan Allen, JSN is a really strong 5. Saquon, Raheem Mostert, and Javonte at running back on this, and I have the Kittle Bowers is done. I've starred Daniel Jones. It's a Neighbors team. I imagine I had also starred Trevor Lawrence because I have Jacksonville here, and maybe even Caleb Williams because I have Chicago. Caleb Williams went before my 9th round pick. He went between my 8th and my 9th, about where he typically goes. And then Lawrence went before my 10th. I probably should have hit one of those guys. But I, just got done talking about taking all the early tight ends and early QBs, making it tough. And I have at least built some depth into my running backs and receivers here. I just don't have anything stackable at this point. I got to throw Geno Smith into another queue, which I don't want to be doing. But I have JSN. This is probably a wide receiver 6 pick. Oh, I have Bowers and Jacoby Myers as a top receiver. I could start to, but I don't want to commit to a Raiders wide receiver, quarterback. The top quarterbacks by ADP are Goff, Herbert, Cousins. Joshua Palmer did go off the board. This is one where I'm on the board at 11:04. We just tried this in another league. I could have taken Palmer at 10:09 and then gotten Herbert at 11:04 and had a little stack here at the 10:11 turn. I took Bowers instead. I got Bowers 16 picks behind ADP there at pick 117. If Bowers was not there, I probably would have tried to build out that LAC thing a little bit. I can't get access to Detroit. Even Jameson Williams is gone. I could try some Carolina stuff. I could try some. This is probably a New England team late. That's the sort of backdoor one because there's 3 or 4 different ways you can pair Drake May. But Geno Smith, Daniel Jones, and Drake May is not a QB room I want to build. I would like to be taking a quarterback. I'm looking at my running backs at this point. Saquon, Raheem Mostert, Javonte. None of them have quarterbacks that I can take at this stage. I could take Bo Nix really late with the Javonte thing. He's another back door. Chat says Myers for Minshew out. We talked about Aiden O'Connell a little bit ago. I really am not confident in who plays most for the Raiders. So I actually don't want to go there. I have Bowers. I don't want to push myself into that. I'd rather take these other 4 QBs that I have in the queue as the main core of what I'm doing here. I mean, I say that, but I also think Myers is probably the right pick regardless. I don't need a running back. I already have 3. I don't think I can justify any of these QBs because I don't know how I'm playing them. I only have 5 receivers. He'd be my wide receiver 6. He's a good play, and he's a directional pick alongside Bowers. Yeah, that's what we're getting at in the chat here. Is it Lorraine or is that an I at the start of your name? I'd like to say your name, but I don't know how to say it, so I apologize for that. But good call. Yeah, a Las Vegas stack without the QB and do you're kind of playing like Devontae Adams gets traded or injured, right? I mean, this becomes directionally positive for both Bowers and Myers. They could be the main part of guys. Okay, it is an L. Thanks, Lorraine. Yeah, good call. We're gonna do LV. I could maybe throw a QB on there and take that risk. Regardless, a wide receiver 6 made sense there structurally. I think a QB made the most sense, but I wanted to keep pushing it there. All right. Jamar Chase, Ayuk, Neighbors, Flowers, Dalton Kincaid, Kenneth Walker, Joe Burrow, Rashee Rice, Raheem Mostert, Chase Brown, Tyjae Spears. So this was a pretty much a 0 RB. Okay, I got Kenneth Walker in the 6th. But only 1 running back through 8, and then I hit 3 in a row. Raheem Mostert, Chase Brown, Tyjae Spears. This is a more traditional, only 1 QB and tight end early. I got a Burrow early to stack up with Chase. I wound up taking Chase Brown with that as well, so I have 3 pieces at the Bengals. I took Dalton Kincaid earlier, but never took the tight end 2. It's another Neighbors team where I starred Daniel Jones and could be potentially hitting Daniel Jones as my QB2 late. 4 running backs and only 5 receivers through 11 rounds is a little bit light at receiver for my liking. If I click over to receiver, there are some ADP values here. Gabe Davis is the number 1. He's 7 picks behind ADP. Who does Jacksonville play week 17 again? Is it Tennessee? Is it Calvin Ridley revenge game? I have Tyjae Spears. Overall, it feels like you focus on mini stacks instead of bring backs. Is that your strategy? I wouldn't say it's my strategy. I'm finding the mini stacks where I can, and I don't overweight the bring back. So I guess it's sort of my strategy. Spears feels like a free square. Was that the last draft? Did I just skip that? We already have Spears on this team. Tennessee versus Jags. They're saying. I think you're just commenting probably that Spears is on this team. He feels like a good play on this team. The thing about Leggett here, who's the other top receiver, is that it gives me the out of Bryce Young as my QB2. I kind of want to throw Gabe Davis on this team, but I'm going to go Leggett and add Bryce Young ahead of Daniel Jones in the queue there. I think he makes more sense as the wide receiver 6 here. I didn't even look at the tight ends. Yeah, I didn't really want to go there anyway. All right. If you're going to take Gabe Davis, that was probably the spot to do it. So maybe that means I'm not taking Gabe Davis. We jump into a new one. It's a 2-3-5-1 at this stage. I got Josh Allen and I took Jordan Love, but I took him 21 picks behind ADP. So a reasonably high QB2, but not as high as where he's actually going. 3 running backs are Jonathan Brooks, Javonte Williams, and Marshawn Lloyd. I talked about why a guy like Brooks and a guy like Williams are a nice pairing. Brooks is probably more of a late season play. Javonte Williams, I think, is a potential efficiency issue, but I think a stable volume guy. I'm just so high on the amount of running back passing that's going to be in that offense. It's going to be a part of my next piece for Stealing Signals. I was writing a little bit about Sean Payton's history, some more about how Bo Nix fits into that as a rookie. If the Broncos aren't top 5 in running back targets this year, I will be very surprised. Very, very surprised. At receiver, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Xavier Worthy, Keon Coleman, Deontay Johnson. Good 5. Travis Kelce is the only tight end here. I have Kendre Miller and Luke Musgrave both in the queue. Miller came around this turn. When I took Lloyd, I starred Miller. The chat saying as much as I hate him, Zeke's probably the play here. I'm not, Lorraine's saying that. I'm not with you, Lorraine. I'm not drafting Zeke. I really like Kendre Miller, and I think he's a really fun 4th on this build at running back. My Green Bay, I don't have anyone stacked for Green Bay other than Marshawn Lloyd. Wicks went. See, this is one of those ones where Wicks went, or I guess 116 isn't. Yeah, he went 20 picks ahead of ADP. It is pretty high. 116 for Wicks took him off the board for me. I was hoping to get him closer to his ADP at 130. He has a 135 ADP. Musgrave would be the other play here at 135, 20 picks ahead of ADP. Or I could try to get him at 154. All I have for Love right now is Marshawn Lloyd. But I want to try to get Musgrave down there. There's 4 tight ends right now ahead of him in the queue. Dalton Schultz is still available. Cole Kmet, Pat Fryermuth, Ben Sinnott. Maybe Musgrave doesn't make it all the way back to my 13th pick, which is 1.4 ahead of his ADP. But I get an opportunity to take Kendre Miller as my RB4 in this build and try to make that work. And if I don't, then I just play Jordan Love as a guy I got really good ADP value on. And I stacked him with Marshawn Lloyd, but I have the Josh Allen, Keon Coleman thing. Oh, man, I only have Keon Coleman too. I should be getting another Buffalo piece, which is, I think, hard to do. All right. I'll worry about that team later. 6 more drafts, 8 minutes to do it. We're at a turn. I got 2 picks here. Christian McCaffrey, Nico Collins, Jalen Waddle, CJ Stroud, Mark Andrews, Keon Coleman, Chris Godwin, Cortland Sutton, Tyler Lockett. So this is an interesting one. McCaffrey in the first, Nico Waddle. I go Stroud, Andrews, 4-5. So through 5 rounds, I only have 2 receivers, and then I've hit 4 straight. Keon Coleman, Chris Godwin, Cortland Sutton, Tyler Lockett. So I'm at a 1-1-6-1 at this point. This is a nice little running back pocket. I could also go quarterback with Purdy being a 14 pick value when it's a McCaffrey team. I don't have an SF wide receiver, but I can totally stack up Purdy and McCaffrey. I have Stroud with Collins. Purdy's way behind ADP. Nick Chubb is again the ADP value at running back. Austin Eckler behind him. Worried about Eckler because he's not really in a great spot to catch passes with a mobile quarterback. I have 6 receivers. The tight end 2 would be Hockenson or Schultz. Schultz does make sense on this build. It's a Stroud Nico right now. Same bye week as Andrews. I already have Andrews as a bring back on that. I don't think I have to take Schultz. I want to take Purdy. And I want to take Chase Brown because I have 1 running back. I'm taking a big ADP discount on Purdy, and I'm taking my RB2, and I'm punting the double stack, getting Schultz in there. I don't think I have to do that. All right, 5 more. Only a couple more minutes here. Breece Hall, Chris Olave, Devonta Smith, Jalen Hurts. Got the stack there for Philly. Dalton Kincaid, Christian Kirk, Rashee Rice, Evan Ingram, Mike Williams, Trevor Lawrence. So I went Ingram in the 8th and Lawrence in the 10th to get a little Jacksonville. Oh, and I had Kirk. So I have a Jacksonville double stack there. Josh Palmer in the 11th. So this is a 2-1-6-2, another one where I got two QBs, two tight ends, up to 6 receivers. It has to be a running back pick. Zach Charbonnet is at the top of the queue. He's one of my favorite RB picks. He's the ADP pick, although I like both the next. Actually, I like the rest of the RBQ right now. It's Marshawn Lloyd, Kendra Miller, Jalen Wright, Ty Chandler, Ray Davis, Kamani Vidal. The rest of the running backs right now are all the names that I do like to see here when I'm on the clock. Charbonnet gets the Bears, and I don't have any Bears. Green Bay, do I have any Vikings? I don't have any Vikings. I don't have any Vegas players, so Kendra is not the... I don't think I have any correlation considerations here. I'm going to put all those dudes in my queue. I'm just going to take Charbonnet, and I'm going to hope that one of those comes all the way back in 13 because it's another RB pick in 13 there. Here's an eliminator we're going to jump into real quick. This is the 3-hole Tyreek. I have Tyreek as a start of a couple different eliminators for me. Tyreek, Nico, Laporta, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, David Montgomery, and Deontay Johnson. Late 8, I have taken 5 wide receivers, a running back, and a tight end. The key with Montgomery and Laporta, who I stacked up for Detroit, and I should put Goff out there. They both have a week 5 bye. I'm going to make this a Detroit stack and hope that I can get through week 5 and then have that the rest of the way, and including into the week 17 week. But it's not a Goff pick here at 94. The ADP is all saying running back or Jordan Love. A lot of wide receivers gone, but I could still grab Cortland Sutton. He's a week 14 bye. I've already hit that once. Lockett, week 10 bye. I've already hit that once as well. Brock Bowers is an intriguing way to really build in that tight end upside. I'm going to do that. I'm going to take Brock Bowers and go Laporta Bowers at tight end and probably make that another 2 tight end build. I like in the eliminator bringing up that extra roster spot by getting this second tight end here. Obviously, I like that in everything. I've been doing a lot of it. You've seen that. Schultz in 10 is the name of this. We're at 907. He's still 3 tight ends down. The reason why is I took CJ Stroud at a 16 pick discount. I did not have any of his other 3 receivers. And so I have Schultz in 10 as the name of the draft here. My pick in 10 is it would be 13 picks ahead of Schultz's ADP. My pick in 11 would be right at his ADP. And so I'm saying I got to take him around early to get Stroud stacked up here. 5 wide receivers on this team. It's a Bijan Robinson team where I then went Ayuk, Waddle, Higgins, JSN, and Sutton. I also took Kincaid. I don't need to push Schultz for like any positional reasons. I have 5 good running backs. 5 good wide receivers. Mike Williams is the best receiver to maybe make a 6th, but I only have 1 running back. It's Bijan Robinson. I'm going to take the upside swing on this team with Trey Benson here. When you have that anchor running back, I think it makes it a lot nicer to get that 0 RB-ish, handcuff-ish rookie upside swing in this range as your RB2. You're already banking on Bijan being a key guy for you throughout the season. 2 more puppies, and we're going to call it. You guys are asking good questions, but I gotta take my kid to soccer practice. Garrett Wilson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Zay Flowers, T. Higgins, Kyle Pitts, Roma Dunze, Curtis Samuel, Ramondre Stevenson. We are in late 9. It's a 0-2-5-1. I have not taken a QB. I have not taken the 2 tight ends, which I often do by this point. I have Roma Dunze. Caleb Williams is the ADP value. The guy on the turn doesn't have Chicago and has taken a QB, so it's probably not taking Caleb. If I go back to my team, I only have the 2 running backs. I have the 5 receivers, and we're through kind of the wide receiver window. I don't want to take a tight end. This is a Javonte Williams pick. He comes in a little bit behind ADP. I'm hoping to get Caleb Williams. That was 9-11. I pick again at 10:02 and 2 picks. The guy on the turn has no reason to take Caleb Williams. I'm probably going to take Caleb Williams on the way back to stack with Roma Dunze. Oh, I appreciate this. You Talk Sports. Great call. He said he'll put the questions in the chat after I finish. That's an awesome idea for some of these questions here at the end, because I am going to run off, and I'll be I've been hitting on all the questions in the chat. Appreciate you guys dropping them there. Also, like, subscribe, turn on notifications for all the future drafts. Let's get this last pick in, then let's get out of here for soccer practice. Tyreek Hill, Devon Achane, Stephon Diggs. This is a team we already looked at. I just took this is a different Tyreek Hill, Devon Achane. Okay, Stephon Diggs, Trey McBride, Terry McLaurin, Keon Coleman, JSN, David Njoku, Jaden Daniels. I had McLaurin. He was not unstacked. Tua gets back to me at 118. This is the same thing that I looked at earlier with Devon Achane and Tyreek Hill. I guess I had 2 teams where I went Hill, Achane. I'm going to get Tua here. I made a similar decision as I did in that other build, where I took Jaden Daniels the round earlier because I didn't know if I'd be able to push Tua back to this spot, but I did get Tua back to this spot in this one as well. So in both cases, I got a nice little 2 QB build. I have Daniels with Terry McLaurin, and I have now Tua with Achane and Tyreek Hill. This is going to be a fun team as it builds out. It has both Trey McBride and David Njoku at tight end. It's got a good 5 wide receiver start. Only Achane at running back. It's going to need some running backs. Another one of those 2 QB, 2 tight ends where I only have 1 running back through 10 rounds. Tricky stuff there. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Appreciate you all. I'll be back on Monday morning. I think I'm going to do like 9 a.m. my time, probably noon Eastern. I'll probably send out a little email, throw it on Twitter. Appreciate all you guys hanging out in the chat. You're awesome. I got to get going. Until next time, peace.